Situated in Gambia, Central Ohio, is a liberal arts college that seems to have more ghost stories than you can count on both hands. Kenyon College was founded in 1824 by Philander Chase, and it is the oldest private college in the state. After becoming the first Episcopal Bishop of Ohio in 1818, Chase set about forming a seminary aimed at training clergy in Ohio. When he received little support for this, Chase travelled to England and set about collecting donations from the aristocracy. With money promised from Lord Kenyon, Lord Gambier, and the philanthropist Hannah More, Chase bought 8,000 acres of land in Knox County. When he first visited the land, Chase apparently said, "Well, this will do." Chase would go on to name the college, town, streets, and buildings after those who had supported him financially. Many of the college's original buildings were wooden and were gradually replaced. The buildings that can be seen today were built in the Gothic Revival and Greek Revival style. Chase, however, was an unpopular president. He was strict and refused to listen to others. Chase eventually resigned as president and as the bishop of his diocese in 1831. Kenyon became the home of the first fraternity house in the US when the Delta Kappa Epsilon fraternity built one there in 1852. Graduates of Kenyon include President Rutherford B. Hayes, Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme, and the actor Paul Newman, but for decades the only students admitted to the college were men. But by the end of the 1960s, the college was struggling financially, and, as a way to boost funds, Kenyon began to admit women. However, females were kept separate from men from 1969 to 1972. Women attended the Coordinate College for Women at Kenyon College and had separate housing and dining areas. It wasn't until 1973 that women were officially allowed to attend Kenyon. However, some male students made it clear that they didn't want women at the college. These male students prevented women from joining clubs and excluded them from parties. According to those men, women were a distraction from their studies, and they couldn't be expected to work as hard with women being present on campus. Years later, S. Georgia Nugent became the first female president of Kenyon. In 2013, Sean M. Decatur became the 19th and the first African American president at the college. As with many colleges, Kenyon has traditions it has kept up for more than 180 years. All students in each incoming class have to take the matriculation oath and sign a matriculation book that is over a century old. Every year, freshmen gather on the steps of Ross Hall to sing college songs. On the day before commencement, seniors return to Ross Hall to sing the same songs again. When a new president is inaugurated at the college, lit candles are placed in every window of Old Kenyon, a residence hall, as a sign of welcome. Kenyon College received attention across the US during the 2004 presidential election. Due to a shortage of voting machines and possibly a large number of new voter registrations, some students had to wait in line for 13 hours in order to vote. In spring 2006, John Kerry delivered the commencement address and said he was honoured by the students who waited in line on election day. It seems that someone wanted to make sure that Kenyon College continues to educate people for generations to come. In 2017, an anonymous donor gave the college $75 million, the largest donation the school has received. The largest donation previously was $25 million. This money will be used to renovate Ascension Hall and build a new library and academic quad. We begin our ghostly journey at Kenyon College at the campus gates. These gates lead directly to the campus's main path. Legend has it that the gates have been built over the entrance to hell. Many say you shouldn't look into the pitchfork trees, which were named after their shape, that surround the gates. Superstitious students have been known to touch one of the gate pillars as they walk through the gates. And some say that you shouldn't walk through the gates when the bells in the Church of the Holy Spirit begin ringing at midnight, unless you want to be taken to hell. The Wertheimer Fieldhouse was donated to the college by the US Navy in 1948. It had previously been used as a military drill hall during World War II and was shipped to Kenyon on a train. Whoever is responsible for haunting the fieldhouse is not known. A student once experienced a door opening on its own and then heard music being played in the supplies cage when it was empty. In the dead of night, security guards have heard the sounds of someone running on the track long after the students have gone home. Located in the Schaefer Speech Building is Hill Theatre. The theatre was built in 1937, but years before the building existed, a drunk driver crashed a car near the site and killed 2 people. The ghosts of those killed now haunt the stage, unscrewing light bulbs and opening curtains. One summer, a group of cleaners encountered 2 students when they walked into the auditorium and asked what the date was. The staff answered, but upon realizing that the students weren't supposed to be in the building, the cleaners asked them to leave. One cleaner walked to the lobby to make sure the students were leaving, but found the lobby to be empty. People have also felt the presence of someone who can't be seen, said to be the ghost of a man who fell from the catwalk and died. The sound of his body hitting the floor is still heard. One dark night, 3 students were working in the theatre at 3 a.m, checking the lighting grid. The lighting designer asked the students stood on ladders to flag the light. This involved covering the light with their hands, so the lighting designer could see the shadow and determine where each light was focused. Thinking the process was finished, one student climbed down the ladder and then heard the lighting designer say, "Flag the light." They both saw a shadowy hand pass over the light. But then the other student walked in from the wings, having already climbed down from the lighting grid. No one was up the ladders near the lighting. Who did the shadowy hand belong to? The Bolton Dance Studio used to be the Schaefer Pool Building. Back when the building had a swimming pool, legend had it that a student using the high diving board broke his or her neck on the glass ceiling, fell into the pool and drowned. Although there is no record of such a death occurring, ghostly goings-on happened in the building. People would hear a voice calling out when there was no one there. In 1979, a student lifeguard heard the sounds of someone struggling in the water and rushed to help, only to find the pool empty and the water still. And the odd occurrences didn't stop when the building was converted to a dance studio. Wet footprints are sometimes found leading to the old locker room, or up to walls. Showers turn on by themselves at night and splashing sounds are heard. Security guards have heard the sound of a diving board bouncing. On one particular occasion, one guard was alone in the building when he began to hear someone walking behind him. He turned around only to find he was alone. But on the floor was a puddle of water that hadn't been there before. Even though the story of someone drowning in the pool is likely to be fictional, Kenyon's swim team has a tradition associated with that very tale. Before the yearly championship meet, the swim team visits the now empty pool in the basement. The story about the dead swimmer is told by candlelight. The swim team ends the visit by counting off the number of their national titles. Does the story of the drowned swimmer have anything to do with a white face with slicked back hair, seen peering out of a window? The Delta Kappa Epsilon fraternity has a tragic tale of its own. In 1905, Stuart Lathrop Pearson was killed while pledging to the fraternity. He'd been blindfolded and taken to a railway trestle over the Kokosing River, where Stuart had to wait for an hour. A note pinned to Stuart's chest read, "This will do for this time, but if we come again, it will be worse." Stuart's fraternity brothers didn't know that a train had been scheduled that night. When they returned to collect Stuart after an hour, they found Stuart's lifeless body. He had been dragged 20 yards from the place he was left at. The note was still pinned to his chest. Stuart haunts his old room on the 4th floor of Old Kenyon. Every 28th of October, Stuart can be seen staring out of the West Wing bullseye window, which he sometimes opens. His footsteps are heard above the 4th floor, despite the 4th story being the highest. Each anniversary, frat brothers carry a coffin filled with stones down Middle Path and gather at the place where the railway trestle once stood. The brothers wear hooded cloaks and read the coroner's report by torchlight. A wooden DKE sign is burned and extinguished in the river. The ashes are then left close to where Stuart was killed. Whoever occupies Stuart's old room vacates it on the anniversary so that Stuart can reclaim it for one day. Or do they leave out of fear? One night, a student living in Old Kenyon woke up to the feeling of cold hands touching the back of his neck. Thinking it was his girlfriend, he checked on her, but she was fast asleep. After turning on the light, he noticed that a small door next to his closet that had just been fitted with a new lock was open. With a flashlight, the student crawled through the doorway and into a narrow crawl space, which led to an opening. In the opening, he found pledge books, DKE pins, and signatures scrawled on the wall. One signature stood out. It read, SLP 1905. Tragedy is associated with Old Kenyon as well. In the early hours of the 27th of February 1949, a fire broke out in the building after the college's biggest dance of the year. A security guard noticed a glow coming from the building, and within minutes the fire had spread. 9 students lost their lives, many of whom were Jewish, as at the time Jewish students weren't invited to join the fraternities housed in the East and West wings. These students lived in the middle section of the building and became trapped. 6 died of asphyxiation, 2 died after jumping from windows, and 1 died in the hospital of severe burns. Witnesses heard the students singing as they awaited their death. By September 1950, Old Kenyon had been rebuilt, but the spirits of the fire victims remained. They have been seen in the corridors, but only from the knees up. Some have seen the ghosts' transparent legs hanging through a ceiling. When Old Kenyon was rebuilt, the foundations were built 10 inches higher than the old foundations. Lights turn on and off, and toilets flush on their own. The screams of those killed are still heard. Students hear cries of, "Get me out of here," and "Wake up, fire." 1949 yearbooks are sometimes found open to the page with the names of the victims listed, and a lit candle can be found close by. One summer night, security guards were sent to Old Kenyon, which was empty for the summer because a light had been seen on in the West Wing bullseye window. It had been in the 90s that day, and the 4th floor, where the bullseye window is, was even hotter. The guards turned the light off and went through the West Wing fire door that leads to the middle section of the building. To their surprise, the middle section was freezing, even though the building had no air conditioning. The guards left the building, and when informed that the bullseye window light had come back on, they refused to go back inside. We end our ghostly journey at Capel's Hall, the scene of a fatal accident. In 1979, a male student fell to his death in the building's elevator shaft. He'd headed home from a party at 2:30 a.m. and was last seen by another student waiting for the elevator. He was apparently going to his girlfriend's room. The elevator got stuck between the 7th and 8th floors. It's believed the student prized the doors open and tried to jump to the floor below. In doing so, he fell to the bottom of the shaft. He was found unconscious by a security guard and died in hospital. But the student didn't want to leave his girlfriend alone, even in death. Their last argument ended when she pushed her bureau against her dorm room door, so he couldn't get in. After his death, his girlfriend found her door blocked by her dresser several times, and she began feeling icy hands around her neck. Other female students have seen his transparent ghost leaning against their furniture. He also tries to harm female students. One woman woke up to find herself being smothered by a pillow held by an invisible entity. During the summer break in 1995, a series of disturbing events happened in the space of a night in the hall. When Safety Officer Dan Turner arrived for his 11 p.m. shift, he was told to keep an eye on Capel's. Lights and showers kept coming on in the building, even though it was found to be empty when checked. At 5 a.m, Turner and his colleagues were sent to the building. Jolynn Bryant, the switchboard operator, had received 3 calls in quick succession from rooms 511, 611 and 711. Each time she answered, Jolynn heard a woman scream and the line went dead. Turner and 3 other officers found the building to be secure, but on the 5th floor a shower had been turned on and steam covered the corridor outside the bathroom. The rooms where the calls came from were checked. The lights were on in each room and every phone was unplugged. The officers turned the lights off and plugged in the phones. Jolynn then contacted the officers again. She'd received another call and heard another scream, this time from room 811. Turner checked the room and found the phone unplugged. Then the elevator began to move down. The elevator in the building stays on the floor it last visited until someone calls it. None of the officers had called for the elevator, and they didn't hang around to see who was on the other side of the doors. And so our tour of haunted Kenyon College ends. Is the campus active with spirits, or are the stories made up? Whatever you decide, you may want to be a little more wary the next time you answer the phone. Happy nightmares.